first county seat in Paulding County was established in 1839 in New Rochester, then the county's largest community, along the Maumee River near the settlement of Cranesville. The village itself and the location of the county seat were short-lived. No county-owned structures were ever built. Court was held on the second floor of a business. The second county seat was Charlotte, laid out by Benjamin F. Hollister on the site of Aquanoxus Reserve on the Auglaize River. Mr. Hollister agreed to erect a courthouse at his own expense if the county seat would be moved to Charlotte, which was near the planned Miami and Erie Canal. The county seat was transferred there in 1841. The courthouse was a two-story brick building measuring 40 by 30 feet. The county seat remained in Charlotte until Paulding was designated in 1851 as the new seat. In 1852, a courthouse was erected in Paulding. It was a two-story wooden building that housed the county offices on the first floor and the court on the second floor. The building was consumed in fire on January 2, 1868. It was located on Main Street at the northeast corner of the courthouse square. The next courthouse, a one-story frame building on the same site, held a courtroom. A brick building for county offices was built to the south of the courthouse, facing Main Street. In January 1886, a petition was brought forth by the people to build a suitable new structure to fulfill the public needs. A special bond was issued by the county to raise the $40,000 necessary to complete the job. The commissioners chose prominent Toledo architect E.O. Follis to plan the new courthouse based on the one he designed in Adrian, Michigan. Work began in autumn of 1886 and was completed in 1888. The Richardsonian Romanesque style brick structure is 105 by 98 feet and 163 feet tall. The county celebrated the courthouse's centennial in 1986. During the mid-1800s, completion of the Miami and Erie Canal and the Wabash and Erie Canal, totaling nearly 40 miles in length in Paulding County, helped spur settlement here. Just east of Antwerp, Ohio, the 6-mile reservoir served to maintain the water level in the Wabash and Erie Canal. The reservoir, about 2,000 acres in size, had been built in 1840 by damming and diking the 6-Mile Creek, and that is where it got its name. The Wabash and Erie Canal was completed in 1843, and the Miami and Erie Canal in 1845, but they only operated for about 10 years before the railroads took over as the preferred means of transportation. The last boat on the Wabash and Erie Canal that docked in Indiana was in the town of Huntington in 1874, but other sections in the state had shut down even earlier. The section through Fort Wayne, Indiana had been sold in 1870 and filled in so the Pennsylvania Railroad could lay tracks. Once its water source had been cut off in Indiana, the 6-Mile Reservoir became a mosquito breeding ground for the spread of egg, a term for what was later recognized as malaria. An effort was made to have the state of Ohio legally abandon and drain the reservoir, but the bill failed to pass. Local residents attempted to cut the dike and drain the reservoir one night in March 1887. But wet work and cold weather being what it was, they did not complete the job. A month later, on the night of April 25, 1887, the secret band of around 200 men, calling themselves the Dynamiters, cut a gouge in the reservoir and dynamited the lock there as well as the ones at Tate's Landing and near Junction. Governor Joseph B. Foraker issued a proclamation requiring the rioters to disperse and dispatch General Axline with several companies of militia, the infantry armed with muskets and bayonets, and the battery with a Gatling gun, came prepared to protect the state's property and preserve the peace. When the militia arrived, however, nobody was there. Investigators were unable to discover who had damaged the reservoir, and in the next session of the state legislature, the reservoir and canal were legally abandoned by the state. The band of men who had attacked the reservoir wall had carried a flag bearing the slogan, "No Compromise." The seal of Paulding County, Ohio, bears this motto today. The village of Antwerp was laid out in 1841 by General Horatio N. Curtis and surveyed by W. Wilshire Riley. The name of Antwerp was selected because it was not listed in any post office directory in the country published at that time. The The business portion of the town initially was located along the Wabash and Erie Canal and served by hotels, warehouses, wharves, and other businesses. The town grew northward toward the prospect of rail that could send and deliver goods much faster than the canal, and business dwindled on the south side of town. Hardware stores, attorney and real estate offices, banks, and more served the people who worked at the Antwerp Stave Mill, Antwerp Furnace Company, and other business enterprises. Along the railroad, the population ballooned, and Antwerp was the largest village in the county until the 1890 census revealed that the village of Paulding had exceeded it for the first time. Where most of Paulding County's communities were river, canal, or railroad towns, Paulding was carved out of the forest as a planned community. George Marsh, a shrewd businessman from Van Wert, purchased land near the geographical center of Paulding County, with the idea that the county seat should be moved to a more central location. Paulding was platted on the banks of the Flat Rock Creek in 1850 by Mr. Marsh and designated the county seat in 1851. Elias Schaefer built the first house and a grist mill at the south end of Main Street. Paulding was incorporated as a hamlet in 1873 and as a village in 1874. The lack of transportation access meant Paulding grew slowly until a railroad reached it in 1880. The population quadrupled to 1,879 by 1890. Most manufacturing businesses produced items using wood from the abundant nearby forest. The county fairgrounds were established here in 1872. Notable brick buildings, including the jail in 1876, the high school in 1884, and the courthouse, built between 1886 and 1888. The town also boasted the county home and a municipal power plant. A large sugar beet factory was built in 1910, becoming the county's first major industry. The nation's first county Carnegie Library opened here in 1916. During the 20th century, Paulding's population continued to grow when the town celebrated its sesquicentennial in 2000. It had 3,595 residents. Payne has a unique history, starting with its name. The original plat for the village, made in 1872 by W.C. Hedges and surveyor Noah Ely, listed Flat Rock City as its name. The May 14, 1874 edition of the Paulding Democrat newspaper advertised the Flat Rock Grocery by J.P. Radenbaugh and Company. Soon after, the name changed to Mallettville, as shown on the county map, dated 1878. By 1883, the village was incorporated under the name of Payne. The construction of the Continental Railroad began and finished under the name the Nickel Plate in 1883. It was a boon for the village. Just as the ground was being cleared by the logging industry and plowing and planting could begin, the grain elevator was a great benefit to local farmers. The population of the village in 1880 was 50, and within 10 years swelled to 1,146. As the town grew, so did some of the problems. A large section of buildings had burned down in 2 fires, in 1887 and again in 1891, amounting to a loss of $50,000. But the enterprising people of Payne rebuilt using bricks rather than wood for its construction materials. Like Payne, Oakwood grew after the Nickel Plate Railroad opened in 1882. The land was first homesteaded about 1851 by John and Annie Clausen along the scenic and historic Augley's River. After the Clausens opened a general store in 1852, other businesses soon followed. In its early days, the community was called Wide Awake. In 1867, a petition was filed to establish a post office called Clemensville, with store owner George C. Clemens as postmaster. It was changed to Oakwood when it was found there was another village with the same name. In 1872, W.C. Hedges platted the town in anticipation of the new railroad line. When the town incorporated in 1889, it was home to 400 residents and many businesses and industries. A brick schoolhouse was built in 1884 and later expanded, with the first commencement held in 1895. A new school replaced it in 1918 and became the home of the Bobcats. Residents dedicated the new school in 2004. The community has weathered disasters, such as a fire in 1899 that burned down nearly all the buildings on the east side of the main street, and the devastating flood of 1913. The town has hosted its Oakwood homecoming for over 100 years.